Shemai guys, welcome back to the Life to the Full podcast, the podcast that helps you make the most of your time here on Earth. My name's Dav Morse, I am your host, and it's good to be back on the microphone once again. We are in the middle of a mini-series I've roughly titled 7 Awful Tips You Should Definitely Ignore. We've done 7 really bad financial tips you need to ignore. We've done 7 really bad physical health tips you need to ignore. And now we're into 7 really bad mental health tips that you definitely need to ignore. I was pretty close to timing that right. There it is. Love that. Anyway, let's get on with it. Just a quick disclaimer for you, I don't claim to be a mental health expert. If you go back right to the beginning of the Life to the Full podcast, you'll know that my expertise is in personal finance and health and nutrition. I don't have any expertise in mental health. I do consider myself to being in very good mental health. I shared a little bit about why that is back in episode 4, so you can check that out after you've listened to this one. The fact that I'm not an expert is one of the reasons I wanted to start a podcast in the first place, so that I could not only share some of my knowledge and experience that would help my listeners, but also that I can learn and present others' expertise for you to learn alongside me. Which is why I've enlisted the help of an expert this week in helping me come up with some of these ideas. My wife is a therapist, and she, for the last 13 years, has been working with children and adults who have been through all sorts of life's challenges. If you can think about it, she's probably seen far, far worse. And I'm so glad to be able to lean on her for advice. It's a great thing to appreciate. You can never know it all. And to co-labour with others is one of life's joys. So with that said, let's dive into this week's 7 really bad mental health tips that you really need to ignore. Number 1. Therapists can fix you. 6 sessions should do it. This is really bad advice on 2 levels, but it's disguised with good intentions and seems like a sensible thing to say. If we make a comparison, a therapist can be for your mental health what a physiotherapist can be for your physical health. The job of a physiotherapist can range from rehabbing people from life-changing physical trauma, like an injury, they've been in a car crash and they need help to learn to walk again. And that ranges from that to just helping someone recover from a minor injury like an ankle sprain, to helping people stay injury-free by giving them exercises and advice on what to do to avoid getting hurt, to make sure that you're really strong so that you don't get injured. Therapists, as you might normally think of them, serve the same purpose, but for our mental health. We all have different levels of needs when it comes to therapy. Some people have suffered horrific things that no one should ever have to go through. These guys need serious therapy to help guide them through the pain and the trauma that they have suffered. Some people will experience one-off trauma, which could change the direction of their lives significantly unless they receive professional help. And some people will have suffered years of constant trauma and abuse that they, more than anyone, should seek help from a real professional. Other people might have had what they just call a pretty good life so far. No major traumas, no major issues that they might perceive in their lives. Everything's fine, thank you very much. Trust me, nobody has got nothing wrong with their lives. They would do well to consider therapy as getting everything in alignment and mostly as a preventative measure in their mental fitness journey. Like the physio who can spot things wrong with our biomechanics that we thought were just normal, A good therapist can draw out of us more of ourselves than we could do on our own, and spot things that we wouldn't see as an issue. So the problem with this tip isn't so much that therapists don't work. It's the way, sadly, that so many see problems with our mental health. A good therapist won't fix you. A good therapist will help you draw out what you need to work through. And the other problem is that 6 weeks is absolutely nowhere near enough in most cases. Just like the physio, you can't say to someone who's had severe needs, 6 sessions will do you fine. It's sometimes a lifelong journey of recovery. It's the same with therapy. Sometimes my wife will work with a client for years. Sometimes progress is quick, sometimes it takes a long time. One thing is for sure, the people who get to a point where they are willing to go to the doctor to get prescribed therapy will be further down the line of needing much more than 6 sessions. And the therapist certainly won't be looking to fix them. The therapist's job is to help them fix themselves, although clearly they would phrase it better than that. A therapist's job is to help you see who you are, and that you are valuable, and that what happened to you isn't your fault, and that you can accept yourself and move forward with life with a newfound acceptance, or something like that. Tip number 2 that you definitely need to ignore, I see this all the time. As long as it makes you happy and doesn't hurt anyone, it's okay. I hear this everywhere and it drives me mad because it's such bad advice. The world seems to be obsessed with being happy. Ironically, the best way of being chronically unhappy is to chase happiness. There are plenty of things wrong with the statement, as long as it makes you happy. I'm all up for being happy. I'm an eternal optimist. I'm happy most of the time. I'm like Angela Duckworth, but not as smart. But there are more important things in life than happiness. Happiness should not be the be-all and end-all of our lives. It shouldn't be the goal of our lives. It certainly shouldn't be our focus if we want to have good mental health. If you want to have good mental health, you shouldn't do anything and everything as long as you think it'll make you happy. For me, holiness is more important than happiness. For me, that means doing what's right in God's eyes. I would contend that living a moral, upright life is better for society than optimizing for happiness. You may not like the word holy or be put off by it potentially, but I always encourage people to lean into discomfort. Ask yourself, what does this look like for you? Does it mean treating people with a bit more dignity? Being more truthful? The "as long as you're happy" motto places us at the center of the universe. It's an entitled mindset which leads us to places that aren't good for our mental health. Doing the right thing can be tough. As the Frey once said, sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. Secondly, just because it doesn't hurt someone, it doesn't mean that it's good for you. Staying indoors all day isn't particularly good for your mental health. Buying a brand new car isn't good for your financial health. Playing video games every evening isn't good for your relational health. And there are certainly things that many people would consider that make them happy, which are disastrous for your spiritual health. So that just doesn't stack up. The other problem is that you're bound to hurt people, because it's a selfish attitude. I'm not an advocate for taking into account everyone in the whole world's feelings, but when you put yourself at the center of the universe and say, just because I want to do it, I'll do it, you will inevitably hurt some people, simply by the fact that everyone's goals are not aligned. If we always have this attitude, as long as I'm not hurting anyone, it makes me happy, I'll do it, it makes us mentally weak. It means we don't get the joy and growth that comes from doing hard things. We don't get to exercise our no muscle. The ability to say no to our desires is extremely important. We should exercise this no muscle regularly as we get used to denying ourselves immediate desires and start to grow a lower time preference. Third tip that you should definitely ignore: never express too much love, affection, or care to someone, because it is human nature to underestimate anything that is free of cost. I'll say that again. Never express too much love, affection, or care to someone, because it's human nature to underestimate anything that is free of cost. I mean, this is just absolute straight-up nonsense. I'm really sad for the person who gave this advice. I'm sad that the world is in such a state that this is a response that someone has to what is presumably rejection, and she is sharing this advice widely. Yes, it's often the case that people don't value things that are free of cost. Hands up if you've ever signed up for a free ebook or a free course and haven't even opened it, let alone finish it. Yeah, me too. My hand is up. I'm way more likely to finish something I've paid for. I'm more likely to use something that costs me something. But it's not a universal rule. Sometimes things taste way better when you haven't paid for it. Anybody know that feeling? You're out for dinner, someone else is paying, and you're thinking, this tastes even better. Or you foraged for something, and you think, I haven't paid for this. This tastes even better. Now, the sad thing about this is that anyone who listens to this advice will miss out on the love and joy that can only come from giving yourself fully to someone. We are made to love, so you might as well do it all out. Don't let fear or past hurt hold you back. I imagine that this advice giver has been hurt in the past. Maybe she's been hurt by someone horrible or malicious or vindictive. It sounds like she's been caught up with someone who hasn't loved her like they should have loved her. Someone has maybe disrespected her, or someone hasn't done right by her. And this is naturally going to lead to withdrawing so that you don't get hurt again. We'll look at healthy relationships next time, but I will say this week that when you're looking for someone to love, care for, and give your attention to, pay attention to the kind of person that they are. Are they the kind of person that will leave you feeling like this poor advice giver? There is absolutely nothing wrong with giving yourself freely and wholly to someone who will do the same in return. Find someone who will give themselves to you completely, someone who will love and care for you unreservedly, and then be that person for them. There is no greater love than to give yourself up for someone else. We're halfway now. Tip number 4. Mental health tips that you should definitely ignore. Take these antidepressants, and that should help. Now, the truth behind this tip is murky. This mental health tip that you should definitely ignore doesn't mean you don't have to not do what it says. Some people take antidepressants and it helps them get through the day. They stop seeing life as so overwhelming. It does actually improve the quality of their lives. I know people who have taken antidepressants and it has benefited them. The problem with this advice is that it doesn't get to the root of the problem. If you're in a place where you feel like going to the doctor to get prescribed antidepressants, something is not quite right. I'm not saying at all not to go and see someone and not to get help, possibly by being prescribed antidepressants. But I am saying You need to get to the root of why you got to this place in the first place. All the antidepressants are going to do, at best, is mask the real issues, and at worst, make you dependent on them and most likely require a stronger dose over time. If you have a problem with the foundations of your house, papering over the cracks might make things look better for a while, but without addressing the problem with the foundation, you're kicking the can down the road and will likely end up with an even bigger problem. If you're not at the point of needing antidepressants at the moment, then you should absolutely take care of your mental health so that you don't ever need them. If you are taking antidepressants at the moment, please use your heightened motivation to get to the root of the problem. It could mean changing jobs, working on a relationship, getting out into nature, cold water more. It could mean addressing spiritual or emotional emptiness. Whatever you do, don't see pharmaceutical antidepressants as the answer. By all means, if they help, go for it. But fix the root cause. Number 5, fifth tip we should definitely ignore. You should be tough. Don't cry. Don't show emotion. This is bad advice for relationships. Good advice if you're Jack Bauer. Once again, this comes down to what am I optimizing for? If you're Jack Bauer and you're working for CTU, then the ability to be tough, not show emotion, not crying is a key component of saving the world. If you don't know who Jack Bauer is, I'm so happy for you, because you have yet to experience the joys, the highs, the lows of the groundbreaking, incredible piece of TV history that is the series 24. If I could go back in time to any period of history, it would be to before I started watching 24, so that I could have the incredible pleasure of watching it again for the first time. So that this tip to ignore makes sense, I'll fill you in. Jack Bauer was an operative working for CTU, the counter-terrorist unit in America, and each series of the TV program is 24 hours of his life. So each episode is 1 hour, so 24 episodes per season. When thing after thing goes wrong and he has to save the day, he has to save America and the world and his daughter from all sorts of terrorists, it's generation-defining telly. Anyway, his job would be impossible if he didn't switch off his emotions and get on with saving the world. There are some scenes where we see his struggles with this, but ultimately he ignores his emotions, doesn't cry, and saves the world. Unless you are Jack Bauer, you really don't want to be so tough that you don't cry and show emotions. Why? Because although it's good for Jack Bauer, actually it's probably not good for him, but it's good for the work and the world. It's not good if you want to have any sort of relationship with people. It's a theme that we see throughout the program, the conflict between allowing himself to feel for people and getting things done. He struggles with relationships throughout the program. Shared experiences connect us, but shared and sharing moments, sharing emotions, deepen that connection. This is just one of the many ways that my wonderful wife has helped me become a better man. It's a tough job for her, bless her, to help me understand emotions and how even so-called negative emotions serve a purpose, and that often that purpose is to connect us with other humans. So if you want to connect with people, have good mental health because of our relationships, then don't be too tough. Show some emotion. Start to recognize it, and you'll connect with other people. Advice number 6 that you should definitely ignore is just get over it. Just get over it. This is actually advice I've probably given in the past. Just get over it. In some ways, it's helpful advice, and as such, this goes down as you need to know when to ignore this one advice. It is undoubtedly helpful to not dwell on the past. It's not good to let past bad decisions affect your current situation and any future situations. If you live long enough, you will certainly face some sort of challenges or adversity. Sometimes you don't have to live very long at all before you're thrown into situations which you'd rather not have to be in. If you don't get the job offer after your interview, if you smash the bowl you've brought with you in every house move since your mum gave it to you to go to university, if you leave your coat at a hotel and they claim they've never seen it, you need to get over it. You need to get over that. You can't let little things in life ruin your mental health. Some things are worth just getting over. On any given day, most people will experience some sort of negativity that can easily ruin their day if they allow themselves to wallow in the injustice or frustration. Facing minor frustrations as well as larger inconveniences is an important skill set to develop. In fact, I would encourage you to do things you know you'll fail at to build resilience. Whilst you're in these situations, you should acknowledge the emotions that you have. Don't suppress your emotions in an attempt to just get over it. That is a mistake and can lead you into trouble down the road. But acceptance of the past is the key to not being ruined by the past. Approach your emotional response with acceptance. When you do this, incredible things happen. It reduces continued stress and mental health struggles. Get to acceptance as soon as you can. When does just get over it really not work? And you should definitely ignore it. The bigger the trauma, the bigger the adversity, the harder it can be to come to acceptance. And it's certainly harder, if not impossible, to just get over. In his incredible book, The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk explains and explores how the trauma that we experience affects our brains and bodies in ways that we are only just beginning to understand. He explains how our brains are rewired following traumatic experiences and how our bodies remember far more than we are able to articulate with our conscious minds. Experiencing significant trauma means that we are unable to just get over it. Our bodies won't let us. He says, trauma is not just an event that took place sometime in the past. It is also the imprint left by that experience on mind, brain, and body. This imprint has ongoing consequences for how the human organism manages to survive in the present. Trauma results in a fundamental reorganization of the way mind and brain manage perceptions. It changes not only the way that we think and what we think about, but also our very capacity to think. We have discovered that helping victims of trauma find the words to describe what has happened to them is profoundly meaningful, but it is usually not enough. The act of telling the story doesn't necessarily alter the automatic physical and hormonal responses of bodies that remain hypervigilant, prepared to be assaulted or violated at any time. For real change to take place, the body needs to learn that the danger has passed and to live in the reality of the present. We do things and have things done to us that range on a scale of, I should really just get over that, to, I am not able to get over this until I accept the past. Our mental health depends on knowing where we are on that scale and responding in a way that is appropriate for where an event fits on that scale. If we are looking for optimal mental health, we can't say to something minor, "Oh, that was traumatic. I can't possibly get over that. My brain and body won't allow it." Equally, we can't say to severe trauma, "Just get over it," because we can't. Sometimes we need the help of a trained professional who can guide us to a place of acceptance and show us the way out. Whoa, that got pretty intense pretty quickly. On to the final one, hopefully a little more uplifting. The 7th tip that's really bad for your mental health, and you really should ignore it, is you can do it on your own. You don't need anyone else. As John Bon Jovi once said, "No man is an island." Name that film and send me a DM on Instagram for a prize. Or put another way, it is not good for man or woman, for that matter, to be alone. This lie that we can be independent is one that seems to be directed at men. The stereotypical lone wolf is idolized and celebrated in certain spheres, although the idea of a strong, independent woman is also one that society seems to promote and celebrate. I recently watched an entire season of Alone. It was the UK version, but I also watched a US version. I don't usually watch a lot of TV, but I recently had some kind of flu and found myself with a 40°C fever, and so I did the only thing I could: binge watch TV that I love. The Traitors New Zealand, Hunted Australia, and Alone. So the premise is this: you get a bunch of people, they get dropped off in the wilderness in Canada, and the idea is they have 10 items that they can take with them for survival, and it's literally just survive the longest that you can. Last man standing or woman standing wins however much the prize money is. So they have things to make fires, things to trap animals, to catch fish so that they can eat and make their shelters. And they have to make shelter and survive by catching and eating what they can. And it's last person standing. You can tap out at any time. You can just phone the crew and say, "Listen guys, I'm done." And the last person to tap out wins. Now the fascinating thing was, for those that struggled with the physical side of things, like not finding enough food to eat, keeping warm, and also those that were nailing it, who had a lovely warm shelter and enough food to last them weeks, the same issue was the one that they struggled with. It was the solitary nature of life in the wilderness. That's what made them give up. There was one chap who would have been a dead cert to win based on his hunting and fishing abilities and his shelter, but it was being away from those he loved that was the real nail in the coffin. He just couldn't stay away from his wife and kids anymore. He needed that relationship. Being on his own was severely affecting his mental health. I'm not a fan of being independent as such. We want to be interdependent. We are designed to depend on others and have others depend on us. One factor that improves my mental health is my relationships, particularly with my wife. I depend on her for certain things, and she depends on me for certain things. We are interdependent. It's not a one-sided dependence. I'm not talking about being needy. I'm talking about having a shared dependence where we each make the other person better. Not being alone and doing things alone obviously doesn't only mean relying on a partner. Having friends that rely on you and you rely on them is an amazing thing to boost your mental health. So if you're struggling with this aspect of your life, be brave. Reach out to someone. Do something kind for someone else. It'll be great for your mental health and also your relational health, which we'll look at next time. So that concludes today's episode. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for giving me your attention. I very much appreciate it. If you've enjoyed yourself, why don't you share this podcast with someone else? Why not go back and listen to another episode? Why not give episode 4 on mental health a go? You won't regret it. Don't forget, get in touch on Instagram, say hello, ask me a question. We're going to have an episode once we finish the series of listener questions. So either, send me a message on Instagram. I'll get to answering your questions on the show some point soon. The next episode will be here sooner than this one. I always get stuck on the mental health episode. Much love to you all. Thank you for your attention. As always, I'm extremely grateful for you. Till next time, peace out.